We're gonna.
Hi there. Good afternoon.
Hi, sorry, I lost my mouse. Are you one of the translators?
No worries. Yes, I am. And I just renamed myself to reflect that.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Would you like us to offer the language justice statement and the instructions on how to use Zoom at the very top of the meeting?
Yeah, so what's going to happen is actually the chairman will come on and speak, and then he'll have you do that. Yes, so we'll have you, do your explanation of how people can join. If you could also add to your speech as well that if anybody is trying to listen to the hearing via the YouTube page, the translation is not gonna, they have to join the meeting to hear your translation. So if they need translation, they'll have to register for the Zoom link and join the meeting, not just watch via YouTube. Does that make sense?
That makes sense. And yes,
Per-
we can add that to the Spanish instructions. Would you like us to offer that in English as well?
sure, that'd be great.
Okay, got it.
Thanks so much.
Good afternoon. Today is Wednesday, April 17th, 2024, and I'm Eric Blank, the chair of the Colorado PUC. Before we get going, we have a Spanish interpreter for this meeting, and if one of the interpreters can come on and explain how to access the interpretation, that'd be great.
Sure thing. Thank you, Eric. Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Valentina, and I'm here with my colleague Lynette. We're both here on behalf of the Community Language Cooperative, and we're here to provide and guarantee your commitment to language justice. Language justice is a type of simultaneous interpretation that seeks to create spaces in which no one language is dominant, spaces in which everyone can participate in the language of their heart. So to achieve this objective, we'll be using Zoom's interpretation feature, and what you will see in a couple of minutes is that a new little button that looks like a globe will appear on the bottom bar of your screen, on that same bar where you currently have the buttons for the microphone, for the video, for the chat, etc. It'll be towards your right hand. Once you see this new little button come up, go ahead and click on it and select either English or Spanish as both the language that you will be listening into and speaking into. If you are joining the meeting on a phone or on a tablet, you will find the same options for interpretation by clicking on the button with the three little dots on the lower right-hand corner of your screen. This button reads More. And also, interpretation is only available via Zoom. So if you are joining via YouTube, you won't be able to access interpretation. So we suggest that you register onto the Zoom meeting, get your Zoom link, and that way you will be able to access interpretation. Hola a todos, a todas y a todos. Buenas tardes, mi nombre es Valentina y estoy aquí con mi colega Lynette. Estamos aquí ambas por parte de Community Language Cooperative para ofrecerles y garantizar su compromiso con la justicia del lenguaje. La justicia del lenguaje es un tipo de interpretación simultánea que busca crear espacios en los que no dominen ningún idioma, espacios en los que todos puedan participar en el idioma de su corazón. Para lograr este objetivo vamos a utilizar la función de interpretación de Zoom. Lo que verán en un par de minutitos es que aparecerá un nuevo botón en la barra inferior de su pantalla que parece un globo terráqueo. Cuando vean ese botoncito aparecer, hagan clic en él y seleccionen inglés o español como el idioma en el que desean escuchar y el idioma en el que desean participar. Si ustedes están en esta sesión por medio de una tableta o de un teléfono, encontrarán las mismas opciones para la interpretación haciendo clic en el botón que tiene tres puntitos en la esquina inferior derecha de su pantalla. Ese botoncito dice More o Más. Y la función de interpretación solo está disponible por medio de Zoom. Entonces, si usted está viendo la transmisión por YouTube, no podrá accesar la interpretación. Entonces, más bien le pedimos que se registre para la reunión para que reciba un enlace de Zoom y así podrá tener acceso a la interpretación en inglés y en español. A quick reminder for those of you that do prefer to use English during this meeting, Spanish is 20 to 25% longer than English, so please be aware of your speed. If you have any questions or any issues whatsoever with this technology, please let the whole group know by means of the chat box so that we can work together to address it. Y la interpretación será simultánea, entonces cuando participe, por favor, mantenga un ritmo de conversación. Y si tiene algún problema o alguna pregunta para con esta tecnología, por favor, comuníquese al grupo completo a través del chat. Muchas gracias por tenernos por acá. Podemos activar los canales de interpretación ahora. Thank you so much for having us here. We can go ahead and start the interpretation channels now.
Thank you. And to access the interpretation, as Valentina said, please go to our website. Before we get started and go on the record, I'd like to turn it over briefly to our director, Ms. Rebecca White, to make a brief statement, and then we'll go on the record.
Thank you, Chair Blank. Good afternoon, everyone. This public comment hearing is scheduled by the Colorado Public Utilities Commission to address concerns raised by the public, government officials, and others regarding the power outages that occurred over the period of April 6th through April 8th of this year. A portion of these outages were the result of a decision by Xcel Energy to proactively shut off power to approximately 55,000 customers in order to prevent the chance of wildfires in and around the Denver-Boulder area.
That scared me so much. You guys say that.
Mira, pues allí consigo gente, ¿verdad? En la sede.
You're muted now, Rebecca.
Thanks. This was the first time that these outages, which are also known as public safety power outages, have been used by Xcel. Since the time of these outages, the Commission has received numerous comments and complaints regarding the manner in which the outages were conducted and the communication issues that arose from the outages. As a result, the Public Utilities Commission has opened an investigation into how public service handled the outages and to determine how future public safety outages can be better managed and communications with the public and local and state emergency personnel improved. The first step in this investigation is to hear from you all tonight and to understand firsthand the issues you faced as a result of the outages. If we are unable to get to your comment tonight, or you no longer feel like speaking in this format, I also would like the group to know, if you go to the PUC website, so it's www.puc.colorado.gov, or to this link here, you can always send us comments electronically via email. Everything that is said tonight, as well as these emails, will become part of this proceeding. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you, Director White. Is the court reporter ready?
I am ready.
All right. We are now on the record. This is a public comment hearing where the Colorado Public Utilities Commission is taking input from concerned customers, community leaders, and others impacted by Public Service Company of Colorado's planned outages over the weekend of April 7th through Monday, April 9th. Today is Wednesday, April 17th, 2024, and I'm Eric Blank, the chair of the Colorado PUC. The public comment hearing is can my colleague introduce herself for the record before we go further?
Yeah, good afternoon. This is Commissioner Megan Gilman.
Thank you. The public comment hearing is being webcast on the internet and will always be live, including during any breaks. Before we begin taking statements, I would like to briefly explain how a public comment hearing works. There is a court reporter who is listening to this proceeding remotely. He is going to take down what you say for the record. This comment hearing is formal, like a court proceeding, and we ask that the audience be respectful of the speakers that comment today. This is the beginning of the PUC investigation into the planned outage events, particularly the notice, communication, and coordination issues. And as such, our focus is to hear from the community and not to answer questions or respond to statements. We are here to listen and learn and to make sure your comments are reflected in the record. This public hearing is one component of a larger fact-based, data-driven investigation by the PUC to better understand what happened regarding the planned outages, the key lessons to be learned, and how to start placing the company and Colorado on a path to best national practice in affordably protecting public safety. Future additional steps may involve a PUC-led structured dialogue between the company, impacted customers, community leaders, emergency responders, and perhaps others, consideration of an emergency rulemaking, and research into what other jurisdictions are doing. So far, we've received over 700 public comments that we're still going through. Ultimately, we expect that there will be a comprehensive wildfire mitigation plan application from the company filed in the coming weeks or months, putting forward for our review and potential approval a power shutoff program that ultimately sets in place the rules and other guardrails surrounding planned outages, notice and communication provisions, and proposed resiliency investments. This will be the primary forum for addressing the longer-term concerns and requests raised by the community and the governor. To allow time for everyone to provide their comments, I'd request that each commenter limit themselves to no more than 3 minutes. We have over 160 people signed up, so please respect these time limits so that everyone has an opportunity to speak and be heard today. Instead of going down the sign-up list, I'm just going to call on people as they raise their virtual hands or turn on their videos. I'd also like to remind everyone that we are still early in this investigation. As Director White said, if you hear something today that you would like to comment on further, please feel free to file post-hearing written comments. I want to thank all you for taking the time to be here and share your comments. This is the first planned outage in Colorado, and right now we have more questions than answers, which is why hearing from all of you is so important. With that, I'd just like to turn it over to Commissioner Gilman and see if you have any initial comments before we go to the public.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Chair Blank, and thank you all for attending. And I really look forward to hearing from you all on your experiences and perspectives. And I just want to say this is a really valuable part of the process for us as we begin to better understand the decision-making actions and communications that surrounded the high wind experienced last weekend, a week and a half ago, how it impacted the public, and really how we view these situations moving forward in a changing climate with substantial wildfire risk, but especially in a time where our daily lives are dependent upon the provision of affordable, safe, and reliable electric service. So very much look forward to hearing from all of you, and thank you all for taking the time to be with us this afternoon.
One last thing before we jump to the public, I'd like to start with some elected officials. Told Commissioner Stoltzman from Boulder County, would you like to get us started?
Thank you so much, Chairman. Thank you, Commissioners. I appreciate you taking time for the community. I'm Ashley Stolzman, Boulder County Commissioner, and just want to give you some feedback. So Boulder County is still recovering from the devastation of Marshall Fire. And so we want to thank and welcome the efforts from Xcel Energy to protect our community. But we also recognize that high winds are a common occurrence, and 2 or 3 days without power can create serious financial hardship and impacts to the health and well-being of the community. And so we would encourage in future events better communications. We do want to also recognize that this wind event isn't just a normal wind event that we see. Dozens of power poles were snapped like toothpicks in our area, which is not a common occurrence that we witness. So we do see that there was significant damage that justified Xcel's planned outages, and also want to acknowledge that while about 50,000 customers were part of a planned outage and received communication from the company by way of phone calls and emails and things like that, there were over 100,000 more people that were added as unplanned outages. So as we think of ways to improve communication going forward, really thinking of how to communicate to customers that are part of planned outages. And as we see these climate-driven winds that are increased much over past practices, we need to think about how to also communicate to unplanned circumstances that arise that urgently occur. So we do recognize not all community members were impacted in the same way. Community members that rely on medical devices and other things like that had more of a hardship. Certain businesses had more hardship. And so thinking through how we can help respond to the variety of customers is really important. But just want to close with underscoring our appreciation for Xcel in taking actions to be proactive and protect our communities. Thank you.
Thank you, and maybe you can stay in touch, Commissioner, with our team as this moves forward. I'd like to turn to Mayor Brockett.
Thanks so much. Good afternoon, Commissioners. My name is Aaron Brockett. I'm the mayor of the city of Boulder. I'm speaking today on behalf of the city. I appreciate the Commission for taking these proactive steps to hear from those impacted and learn from their experiences. And I also want to recognize the position that Xcel was in. Given the risk electric infrastructure can present to the community, a public safety power shutoff seems an appropriate and necessary tool. But as far as execution is concerned, however, Xcel failed to take the steps that would have resulted in better and more manageable outcomes for seriously impacted communities such as ours. Executing the shutoff was not a spur-of-the-moment decision by Xcel. It is something that they have been considering for some time, which leads us to the following questions. Why was Xcel not proactively working with communities like ours to develop a shared plan for how to execute the shutoff? Why weren't steps taken to work with us to protect our critical infrastructure? And there were major gaps in notifications to our business community, and why did that happen? So I want to give you a few details about our experience. As we know, we first got notice Friday evening about the possibility of a shutoff, and the next notification was 10 a.m. Saturday morning, indicating the shutdown would happen. But other than a low resolution map, no specifics were given on the extent of expected customer impacts, and we only had 5 hours to prepare to support our community. So over 35,000 customers in the city lost power, with some of the outages lasting as long as 2 days and 20 hours. Critical facilities that were included in those outages were the city's 2 water treatment facilities, our wastewater treatment plant, our emergency operations center, the jail, the homeless shelter, and several of our fire stations. Traffic signals lost power throughout the community, and this outage impacted cellular and internet services, leaving many without a means to communicate. I know you have and will continue to hear from many of it in our business community about inventory and revenue losses. The economic impact of food spoilage alone for businesses and residents was well into the 6 figures, and significant revenue losses for businesses added to the total. Certainly, PSPS reduces certain risks. However, shutting off power at the magnitude that we experienced also represents a material threat to public safety in and of itself. There are significant costs to the city to provide the emergency response that was necessary. We had extra officers patrolling our streets and a full deployment of our fire department. We provided hotel shelter for community members, and we worked to amplify the limited information that we had from Excel, but it wasn't enough to satisfy the community. We also had to shut down the city's hydroelectric facilities and operate primary water supply on backup power for almost 3 days. Our wastewater treatment plant has redundant power feeds from 2 different substations, and in 2006, Excel assured us we would never lose power from both, but that's exactly what happened at 3 p.m. that Saturday. We faced the prospect of raw sewage entering Boulder Creek, which would have caused a public health crisis, impacting the downstream communities of Lafayette and Louisville, and have a cascading effect on our healthcare systems and long-term care facilities. We had to call the highest levels of Excel to stave off disaster, and we had less than 10 minutes to spare when power was turned back on. So I just want to have a few requests for the commission considering what happened. One is that we require that Excel work with local governments to develop implementation plans that include detailed maps of all areas that could be impacted by outages, that we have strategies to minimize those outages and accelerate restoration with emphasis on critical facilities and vulnerable customers, and communications and engagement plans that outline shared responsibilities. We need to adopt rules for customer notifications and support to include prescribed timelines for advance notice and accountability for updating customer records. And communications must include multilingual messaging along multi-channel strategies. We need to set expectations for timely restoration following outages. And also, we hope that as part of your upcoming wildfire mitigation plan, or EXCELS, that they identify area of risk and methodologies that will be used to inform outage decisions and programs and services that will be made available to vulnerable customers. And also to make sure that Excel lays out a clear strategy to harden their infrastructure. And lastly, I would like to request the Commission consider Excel's financial responsibility for customer losses that have resulted from these proactive events, and particularly in situations like this one where customers have inadequate notice. So thanks so much for having this hearing today. Our Boulder community is committed to helping navigate the path forward, and we stand ready to support the Commission throughout the process. And thank you for your time.
And Mayor Brockett, if you could also stay in touch with our team and continue to work with us as we move this forward, that'd be greatly appreciated.
We absolutely.
So thank you for your. Thank you. Councilwoman Holton from Wheat Ridge.
Yeah, good afternoon. Can you hear me okay?
We can.
Great, thank you so much. My name is Rachel Holteen, and I am currently serving my second term representing City Council for the City of Wheat Ridge. I'm also an active board member for Colorado Communities for Climate Action. I just really want to thank everybody for their time today. Listening to the community on issues like this is at the heart of civic service and how we all get to better places. As we all know, our lives are increasingly oriented around mitigating the effects of climate change. And whatever that has looked like in the past, that's actually been the easy part. Today and moving forward, it's just going to be taking bigger, more aggressive, and highly coordinated actions to at best prevent and more likely minimize the costly damage. I'm going to be a little bit shorter in my comments because I just want to say, the mayor and commissioner actually made a lot of the most important points I was going to make. But I want to give the perspective of an elected official in a community that was impacted by non-planned outages and the confusion that we had about whether the outages were planned or unplanned, and the lack of communication from Excel as to what type of outage we were experiencing and how we should respond to that. As a city councilor, I was coordinating with my city manager. We had not received any information from Excel as to how our community was being impacted. We didn't know that planned outages would be getting those text messages. So there was just a lot of confusion in unplanned communities. And I mention that because anytime that the predicted wind is going to be bad enough that there is a need for a planned outage, that means that there's a much higher likelihood of what we saw 10 days ago with a map that is just riddled with a bunch of unplanned outages. So I really ask for you to consider in your communication plan clarity for the general public around expecting both types of outages and how the community can get the right information My power went out at 2 o'clock on Saturday. I got one text message then, and then I didn't hear any other communication from Excel until 15 minutes before the power went back on, almost 30 hours later. So I just want to highlight the need for communication. Please coordinate with local governments so that people like myself who are in city council can be a service to my neighbors who were also just really confused and didn't know what was going on. So lastly, I just want to highlight the importance of undergrounding our utility poles. I think that's an important component for resilience moving forward. And I look forward to seeing the kind of plans that come forward in response to the issue we had 10 days ago. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. And
again, as an elected official, if you can stay in touch with our team over time, that would be greatly appreciated. So thank you. Thank you, Councilwoman. Are there any other elected officials, Director White, or should we just go down the list?
Hard to tell, Chair, given the large number of participants. I just ask any other elected officials to please sort of wave your hand. We'd sure like to make sure you're heard.
All right, with that, Mr. Rosenberg, would you like to go?
Certainly. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to be on this call. I appreciate what Mayor Brockett said, and I'll try not to repeat too much. I am the owner of 2 restaurants here in Boulder and one in Denver. I am in Black Belly Restaurant. Currently, we were affected by the power outage. We are a large restaurant with a lot of employees and a tremendous amount of perishable inventory. We rely on electricity for our livelihood and our survival. I was not given any warning about the power outage. I was informed by neighbors, other restaurant owners, and employees that this may or may not happen to our restaurant. I could not get definitive information from Excel. I am signed up for alerts. We have had unplanned outages at this restaurant a few times in the past. We've had 2 major disruptions because of a loss of power over the 9-year span that we've been open. Both of those incidences, I had to claim business interruption insurance. This time it did happen with no warning. 3 o'clock on Saturday, about 30 minutes later, I did receive a text from Excel telling me that I may or may not lose power, which was already the case. And then I got no information from Excel until Monday afternoon, about 15 or 20 minutes after the power was restored. But during that time frame from Saturday to Monday, I had no idea when we were going to get our power back. We have between $50,000 and $60,000 worth of food inventory in this building. I have 100 employees, and it's my livelihood, my employees' livelihood, and obviously a lot of food that should not go to waste. I am in full support of preventative measures to protect property and lives. In fact, after the Marshall fires, we put up a relief center here in my parking lot and fed people. We provided clothing and toys for kids and all sorts of relief measures and just a place for people to come. So I am as community minded as I can be as a business owner. All I ask is that if this ever happens again in a planned way, that we get information so we can protect our product, inform our employees, inform our customers, and not, something like this can easily put a restaurant out of business permanently. I know a lot of small business owners who just don't have the resources that I might have to protect my products. We were lucky enough to borrow a refrigerated truck and saved most of our food, but we did lose 3 days of sales, which was a huge impact. So thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
Sorry for your loss and losses. Appreciate you sharing your experience. Thank you, sir. Mr. Blondeau.
Hey, thanks, commissioners. Randy Blondeau here, just a citizen of Boulder County. We were affected by the proactive shutoff. First thing is we do appreciate the planned outage and understanding what happened with the Marshall Fire. It didn't seem as if there was a advanced communication, advanced notice, and so we fortunately were able to buy a generator to keep our perishables fine for the about 26 hours or so our power was out. The one thing that it seems, and you use the term, Commissioner, you used the term proactive measure, which is appropriate. The preventative, how to prevent the outage in the first place, what's being done to harden the infrastructure, because apparently our grid section in Niwot was one of the keystones, I guess, that would cause other outages potentially. However, there were neighborhoods to the west of us, neighborhoods to the north of us that still had power, so I'm not sure couldn't understand the rationale behind the proactive outages. Again, I think this first time got it, but how do they prevent this from recurring so we don't even have a preventative outage? And I think we've mentioned, hardening the infrastructure, burying the lines, whatever it takes. That's an Excel problem. Just wanted those observations to be heard by the group, and we really appreciate you giving us this forum. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Greatly appreciate your sharing. Ms. Hill.
Hello, thank you, commissioners, for this opportunity to speak with you. I am Amy Betray Hill, and I'm here to represent the Colorado Cross Disability Coalition. I also have the pleasure of serving on the PUC Equity Advisory Group. And I'm here because two of my good friends and colleagues today could have been seriously injured or could have died during Xcel's unannounced shutdown the first weekend of April. I understand that there needs to be outages to prevent wildfires, not arguing against that. But these two individuals have disabilities. One has a serious spinal cord injury. The other has ASL and is ventilator dependent and needs energy to control their body temperature 24/7. My friends are alive and okay today because they had battery power backup that they got from Julia Beans. I'm going to let her talk more about her work. And a program for Medicaid that provided these kind of backup batteries. But there are a few of the lucky 113,000 medical dependent, very fragile individuals with disabilities or chronic illnesses that need access to consistent power. And this doesn't include the number of people with private insurance that depend on medical devices and temperature control to stay alive. Despite numerous attempts to reach power utilities in Colorado like Xcel, there hasn't been much discussion with experts like Julia Beans and the UC Center for Inclusive Engineering and Design, or groups like Independent Living Centers, Colorado Cross Disability Coalition, folks who are willing to work with Xcel and the PUC to make our communities more resilient and to increase the ability to deal with the increasing number of power outages that are going to come with climate change. Within the Colorado government, PDPHE Health Equity Commission, parts of DOLA, the Colorado Department of Healthcare Policy and Finance, they have information that they're willing to share, but this information is held in silos. I would ask that the PUC help Xcel and other utilities break down those silos by requiring utilities to do more than just put people with disabilities on registry lists. Work with the community, not just people with disabilities, but the whole community on how to create robust alert systems so people have noticed that a power outage is coming when it's known. How can utilities help ensure that everybody who needs backup power can have it if they need it to stay alive? And how can we ensure that there are enough power stations available throughout the state so anybody who needs that power can access it? Thank you very much for this opportunity to speak.
And Ms. Hill, if you can also stay in touch with our team and help us reach out to broaden our network into the communities you described, that would be greatly appreciated, and more to come. So thank you for sharing, and we're going to do what we can to, as you say, break down the silos. So thank you. Ms. Brofsky.
Thank you, Director Blank and the Commission for hearing from us today. I'm representing Agilent Technologies. I'm a Director of Facilities and Environmental Health and Safety at our Boulder plant. We manufacture active pharmaceutical ingredient at our Boulder plant, and as such, we are an FDA regulated and OSHA PSM regulated site. We're aware of the safety concerns related to the high winds and Xcel's request to shut down power proactively. However, providing a 2.5-hour notice via a telephone voice message on an automated line on a Saturday that power was being shut down for over 24 hours was extremely disruptive to our manufacturing process and will result in product loss of several $1 million. No updates on restoration ensued beyond that, and never did receive any updates on when the power would be restored until it was finally restored about 26 hours after the fact. Our request is, if future outages are expected for high winds, details on what would constitute an outage. Are they going to limit it to certain wind speeds? A 2-day business justification and notification would really help us avoid our business impact. And again, really appreciate the Commission taking statements from us today.
And Ms. Brofsky, again, if you can stay in touch with our staff and help us move this forward and continue the dialogue, that'd be greatly appreciated. Again, sorry for your losses.
Will do. Thank you, sir. Appreciate
it. Ms. Weston.
Hi. I wanted to let you know that I live in Denver, Colorado, and I wanted to make a suggestion that on Saturday when the electricity went off, we did get a notice. It was an hour later that your electricity went off. We figured that out because we had called and we got a notice. But then maybe 4 hours later, my neighbors on the even side of the streets, their lights came back on around 10. We got the same notice that says your electricity is on, but since we're on the odd side of the street, our electricity didn't come on until Saturday night. So we were about 26 hours, 27 hours, which is darkness. So my suggestion is that if you have a block, even in odd numbers, that whole block should be on that same circuit, first of all. And then second of all, even when I did call Xcel to inquire, they hung up on me twice. So I'm just like, this is rude. So, and third, I wanted to ask, I know like on the news, the representative said nobody's going to be reimbursed for any food. But to me, as you said earlier, there needs to be a notice or prior to the 30 minutes after being shut off that we're going to get shut off. And if there's a wind, because I don't even know how the side of my side of the street, the odd side of the street, I don't know how the zones work, but it seemed like they need to be the same. So when we get an email or when we get a text message, it's concerning the whole street and not just trying to figure out which side of the street you're on. So it doesn't make sense. But hopefully customer service will be picked up nice. I understand frustration when a lot of lights get turned off. And hopefully they can update their customer service rep to at least give them some kind of information other than hanging up on people, because that's just rude to me. So that's what I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing your experience. Greatly appreciated. Ms. Swigger?
Hello, and thank you for providing this forum. My name is Bettina Swigger, and I'm the CEO of the Downtown Boulder Partnership. And first, we want to be clear that we know that our community is familiar with devastation caused by wildfires, and we do appreciate Excel's attention to preventative measures. And as a business community, we're all dedicated to cultivating an environment where we can be prepared for emergencies. And it's a good thing that the April windstorm didn't cause any major fires. But due to short notice and unclear communication from Xcel Energy, many members of our business community suffered economic hardship. And because of the chaotic communication, the impacts were significant not just for those who suffered a power outage, but also for those who were not part of the power outage, because they lost business and or unnecessarily closed and took emergency actions because they thought they would lose power, and then they found out that they did in fact have power. For example, the east end of Pearl Street was without power. The west end was energized. One side of the Pearl Street Mall was dark and the other was not. So to the general public and to the businesses, the shutoffs appeared to be arbitrary. Downtown Boulder partnered with the Chamber, and we opened a survey on Monday, April 8th. To date, the survey has received 96 responses, and we got respondents from restaurants, retail, hotels, assisted living facilities, manufacturing companies, laboratories, nonprofit arts organizations, and others. And all of these businesses reported damage. And they most importantly cited lost revenue during what they anticipated to be a busy weekend. It ended up being a really beautiful day on Sunday, and when the winds calmed down, many people were confused as to why the power continued to be off, despite the idea of danger appearing to have vanished. So just some headlines from that survey. And again, this is only 96 people who reported their losses, but an estimated $1.3 million in lost revenue, an estimated $240,000 in unpaid wages. That's money out of employees' pockets. An estimated $125,000 in inventory and product losses. And they reported that an outage of more than 24 hours requires an estimated $250,000 to return to normal business operations. As Mr. Rosenberg noted earlier, private insurance policies don't necessarily cover these types of interruptions. Businesses need access to generators and refrigerated trucks. And furthermore, businesses were fearful of public safety issues due to darkened city streets and traffic safety risks. So we ask that there be some accountability and a clear plan for communication in the future so that businesses can plan and be part of a communication strategy instead of trying to literally work in the dark and feel like they are not supported by our energy partners. Thank you so much.
And Ms. Swigger, if you could also stay in touch with our team and help us understand the experience of your members, and work with us to communicate with the utility and the process going forward, that'd be greatly appreciated. So thanks, greatly appreciate you sharing. Mr. Torres.
Yes, thank you to the commission for opening up this opportunity for input. I was personally affected as a Boulder resident, lost power, so I had plenty of thoughts on that, but also represent the American Lung Association as we advocate for folks who rely on supplemental oxygen concentrators. You've heard at least one comment already from the disability community. But aside from my own personal impacts, I know that Excel can greatly improve the communications for the general public. For instance, I never received a notification of the planned outage. I lost power about 10 after 3 in the afternoon on Saturday. Never received any indication that would happen. And throughout the outage, our neighborhood never even appeared on the outage map from Excel. So I reported the outage and it was denied that there was an outage in my area. So some basic communication improvements, especially for the tools that the public is referred to for questions, would be on my priority list. But just speaking in terms of vulnerable communities, I think to the extent that these public safety outages become potentially a more frequent wildfire mitigation strategy. Of course, the Lung Association supports these types of public safety measures to reduce the risks of wildfires. But as an organization, we would urge utilities and decision makers to prioritize public outreach and communication with particularly vulnerable populations. Media reports across the outage area indicated that patients with chronic needs, particularly those on oxygen, were left with no other option but to turn up to the nearest emergency room. At least one report in Jefferson County indicated local community members and decision makers there scrambling to provide a network of oxygen to those who require it. And so I just would urge the continued prioritization of these vulnerable communities, particularly the thousands of people who rely on oxygen and concentrators, CPAP machines, nebulizers, et cetera, and many other chronic disabilities, chronic diseases who need additional preparation time, as these are proactive measures, right? Building in some additional opportunities for those populations to prepare. There's many difficulties with oxygen distribution. And so many folks are not able to stock up on oxygen, for example. And so that's one of the many concerns that we had, but thank you for the opportunity.
And again, Mr. Torres, if you can stay in touch with our team and help make sure we understand how we can do better, that'd be greatly appreciated. So thank you, sir. Former Councilman, Mr. Pomerantz.
Hello, I'm Steve Pomerantz. I'm a former Boulder City Council member, former member of the DRCOG board, and was nominated to the PUC in the 80s, actually. As Eric remembers. I want to comment a bit in different direction here. The thing that shocked me most about this whole outage was the amount of damage that occurred from a windstorm that wasn't really all that bad relative to what we've seen in Boulder. It made me think that Xcel, in fact, was not being responsible and had not been responsible for probably ever since they took over from Public Service Company to keep the equipment up to snuff. To me, the critical question should be, what do we need to do to avoid having to shut down in the future, if at all possible, not just how to plan better for the outages? So what I would ask you to do is get a full detailed report from Xcel of all the damage that occurred, and the damage that occurred in this thing versus damage that occurred over the last 2 years and since the Marshall Fire, first. Second, set some standards as to the level that things should be maintained. In my view, the standard should be that everything should be able to survive 100-mile-an-hour wind. Then third, get Xcel to bring everything up to standard. Tell them they got 6 months so we don't have another one of these in the next windstorm, which could easily occur this December. Then, once you've done that, and my suggestion would be to put it out to bid, frankly, because I don't think you can count on Xcel to do the job right, given what the performance has been to date. Fourth, hold Xcel financially responsible for all the damage that occurred because of the shutdown. That way, they've got some incentive to actually keep things in shape. And then finally, I would, in terms of the long-term picture of the system around here, as you can tell from the chaos with which this shutdown occurred, one side of the street was shut off, another side wasn't, and so on, that the whole system needs to be reorganized up here into microgrids so that it can be managed effectively. And we can put some backup power into the system, because there's plenty of solar around here and plenty of batteries, so that people can get a little bit of power anyway, even in the case that something actually does have to get shut down. Those are my suggestions. I'm happy to discuss them further offline with any of you folks that want. But thank you for doing this hearing. This was a really good idea.
Really appreciate it, Mr. Pomerantz, and look forward to continued conversation. So thank you. Ms. Beams.
Hi, my name is Julia Beams, and I am with the University of Colorado Denver's Center for Inclusive Design and Engineering. And I'm here to just share some resources that I think could be helpful in the future. Because we have a program we are working currently with healthcare policy and finance in distributing the backup batteries to people who are on medically necessary devices, like we've heard before. We've currently distributed over 1,000 batteries across the state, and people have been utilizing them, and they talk about what a difference it's made for them when the power goes out. So after the last windstorm, I started receiving multiple emails and phone calls from not only individuals and family members, but from emergency managers and public health departments wanting more information about these particular batteries because they had consumers calling needing them. And in some instances, seconds matter and not hours. The batteries that we distribute, we based on decisions on whether or not they were flammable, the amount of time it takes them to recharge, the fact that they were pass-through batteries so that when the power goes out, the power continues through the battery, and of course the ease of use. So we've had multiple comments saying what a life-saving device this is, and I would suggest that the power companies utilize the resources that are out there, because these are currently being distributed for free, and we have alternative funding options so other people can get them. But I do think it's something that would be terribly necessary for individuals. And we really push the self-advocacy and get people to try to get these as much as they can on their own and not rely on others. Because the last thing we want them to do is have to evacuate with all their medical equipment if they don't have to. So it makes a big difference in the amount of time that the communication is put out there. So again, the batteries that we are distributing charge in less than 2 hours or a little over 2 hours. And so they still need that amount of time to make a plan and see what they're going to do. So thank you for listening. I appreciate your time.
Can I ask you a question? Do you get support from the utility, the regulated utility system, to provide batteries, or is this all third party?
This is all third party right now. It would make sense that the utility companies might want to support something like this, or at least help subsidize these batteries.
If you can stay in touch with our team on that, that'd be greatly appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Niels Tellier, you're up.
Thank you, Chairman. My name is Niels Tellier. I reside in Boulder Heights, Boulder County. I'm a licensed professional engineer, volunteer firefighter, and business owner. My community experienced a 49-hour power outage. I have 2 questions and respectfully would like to submit 2 requests. Question number 1 is that transmission and distribution substations include extensive protection controls that can detect and cut out circuit faults in milliseconds. My question is, have the protection control parameters been relaxed in the last 20 years to allow the integration of intermittent generation without causing nuisance grid blackouts? And my request would be to review comparative protection settings between 1990 and today, particularly if they're audited and validated by NERC. The next question I have is that the windstorm ended Sunday morning before 8 a.m., but power was restored in my community Monday evening around 5 p.m. We did not have any Excel trucks surveying the lines prior to restoring power, which is unusual, nor did we have any damage in our power lines in our neighborhood. My first question is, was the extended blackout caused by the eclipse? The California ISO planned its resource adequacy for the April 8th eclipse event and published the following information on its March 6th, 2024 bulletin. Although the eclipse was east of our interconnection region, it affected as far as California, a reduction of 6,300 megawatt of the 19,000 megawatt solar generation. That's 33%. Net load increased ramp rate of 115 megawatt per minute before the eclipse, and 150 megawatt per minute decreased ramp rate after the eclipse. Obviously, other states in the Western Interconnect were affected by the eclipse, such as Arizona, New Mexico, Utah, and Nevada. My questions are, did Xcel curtail the delivery of retail electricity in order to sell wholesale energy or capacity to neighboring utilities and ISO? Wouldn't this be considered a failure to maintain reliability and affordability of service for the sake of profit? And my request is to review Xcel's bilateral trades for export of energy, capacity, spinning reserve, and the financial profit made by Xcel during the eclipse event of Monday, April 8th, 2024. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Your questions are noted. Mr. Jonathan Singer. Mr. Singer, are you there? I think I saw you a few moments ago. Mr. Ellis.
Hello, my name is William Ellis. My wife and I live in the unincorporated mountain community of Raymond in western Boulder County. We generally support the preemptive shutdown of power during extreme weather events, living in an area that is certainly subject to wildfires. And I'd like to note that Xcel Energy did do a lot of work in our immediate area for upgrading power poles, trimming trees, and so forth. The problem that we have primarily is not so much Xcel as CenturyLink telephone. When we lose power in the mountain communities of Boulder County, and certainly in my community, after as short as 3 or 4 or 5 hours, we lose landline telephone service. That means we lose 911 capability and reverse 911 capability. And we also lose internet if we have DSL internet. So for 3 hours, my community was isolated from any sort of communication at all. It was somewhat troubling because west of us in the Allens Park area, Estes Park Power did not de-energize their lines. So we went to bed Saturday night during high winds, wondering if a fire broke out to the west of us, how people would get the word that they needed to evacuate when reverse 911 did not operate and no other form of communication. So that's a real problem that needs to be addressed. We worked with Boulder County Communications and Xcel and CenturyLink a couple of years ago on this issue. And eventually we're told that CenturyLink was going to pre-position generators to be able to rapidly deploy them in the event of extended power outages. Even with advance warning of the power being turned off, that did not happen in our area. And this is something that needs to be addressed. There are probably hundreds of people, at least in the mountains of Boulder County, that had no way of receiving emergency notification in the event of a wildfire, and it's a recipe for disaster. This is a problem that really needs to be corrected. We did receive plenty of advance warning from Xcel about the planned power outage via text message, emails, and telephone calls. But of course, during the power outage, we could not receive any sort of updates from Xcel as to when the power may be restored. They simply couldn't call us. So there needs to be better link between power, CenturyLink providing telephone service. The problem is, and I don't know the technical term for it, but these concrete box switching units have battery backup. Those batteries only last 3 or 4 hours. So emergency communications is lost during extended power outages. Just wanted to bring that to your attention. Thank you for the opportunity to comment.
Thank you, Mr. Ellis. And Director White, maybe I'm hoping your team can, summarize the list of issues raised. I had not focused on the loss of backup of direct communications for emergency services. So hopefully we can have a list and a report out from this public hearing from your team.
Absolutely, Mr. Chair, and Mr. Ellis, we will follow up. 911 is part of the broader portfolio that the PUC handles. So we kind of have a couple touch points there, but we'll be in touch. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Singer, back to you.
Thank you so much, and thank you for your patience. Jonathan Singer, I'm the Senior Director of Policy Programs at the Boulder Chamber of Commerce. And I wanted to thank you for your time and attention to this matter. And the most important thing, and I know that you've heard this probably multiple times today and have heard it even before today, the amount of stress and concern and financial loss that people have experienced, whether these are businesses or homeowners or renters, is something that is not lost on us. And at the same time, we deeply, deeply appreciate the frontline workers working to get us back up online. I'm not going to repeat a lot of the talking points that you've heard from our other community members and other business owners, but I wanted to put a couple of things out there for the Public Utilities Commission as well as the general public to understand. The Boulder Chamber is now working very closely with our city partners, nonprofits, and for-profit institutions to ensure that in future events that we have rapid response internal networks for our businesses who might be most uniquely affected by another power outage. As that is working in the interim, we're also very cognizant of the fact that we have seen multiple businesses that are afraid to use their insurance right now to recuperate their losses during this outage. So one of the things that we wanted to put on the table for consideration is whether or not there's any sort of small business economic impact fund for our restaurants that lost food, and for other industries in our scientific industries that may have lost experiments that cost money and time. So we've seen examples of environmental impact funds in the world of oil and gas. This is one thing to consider and one thing we're willing to roll up our sleeves and discuss further. Insurance reform, which I know is not under the PUC, but would be under DORA, is another place for consideration. And one thing that we're asking for is that conversation between the Division of Insurance, the PUC, and our regulated utility. Once again, we're also looking for the PUC to have conversations with other utilities, municipally owned utilities such as that in Longmont, as well as our REAs, to see what other best practices are in place so a repeat of this type of event doesn't occur again with the same nature and impact that we saw here. We're still quantifying the economic impact, but it's not insignificant. And so I'll be here for the duration to hear what other input is out there. And I want to thank you all for your time and consideration as we look to ensuring that we can blunt the blow in future iterations of events such as this.
And Mr. Singer, again, we're going to try and sponsor something in early to mid-May with a company where we collectively try and dig into this further. So if you can figure out how to best present the experiences of customers, impacted customers, that'd be greatly appreciated. So,
well, we'll take that feedback back, absolutely, and thank you to the commission and to the chair for their consideration. And we'll be putting our shoulder to the wheel. And please reach out to me and reach out to us as we work to solve these problems with you.
Yeah, and it's not just best practice in Colorado. There's a lot of experience in California and Oregon and now Hawaii that are years ahead of us. So best practice is, something to dig into more broadly. Thank you, sir.
Absolutely. I appreciate your time.
Appreciate yours. Mr. Todd, you're up.
Thank you. Our comments resemble Mr. Rosenberg's, Bettina Swigger's, Stephen Pomerantz's, and Jonathan Singer's well-articulated words. We own 2 restaurants next to each other on Broadway in Denver. Power was out on our block only for 3 days. It was on one block in every direction, including across the street, as stated by so many others here. Unfair and arbitrary seems to be the vibe of the day. We lost nearly 20,000 in business over Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. We paid for employees to stay on Saturday night because we didn't know when or if the power was coming back on. While State Farm is covering one of our businesses, another insurance company for our other business is not. 3 Insurance is that company. They say, since this was a utility outage caused by an abundance of caution, it is not their responsibility, meaning they're saying it's Excel's. Excel doesn't seem to feel at fault here either. Neither do some of the other business interruption insurance providers, and certainly not the landlords. The rent is always due. I'd like to know what Excel is going to do to compensate for this. Clear and correct communication would be great, but what we really need is accountability from Excel and compensation for the loss that so clearly rests on their shoulders. That's all I have to say.
Sorry for your loss, and appreciate your sharing. Thank you, sir. Mr. Wilson.
Hi, thank you for the opportunity to be heard. This is definitely a sensitive issue for us because I run Ava Networks. We are one of the critical communication providers up here in the mountains of Boulder. And, we are no stranger to power loss up here. Unfortunately, it's gotten to a point where if it snows, we kind of have to anticipate there's going to be some kind of interruption event that happens. And we have no communication from Excel. So back with this April outage, we had minimal notice, and our power throughout the entire region went down for over 2 days. We only have battery backups for a day at most for a lot of our access sites, and I'm going to have to invest out of just our retirement savings about $40,000 to adequately prepare for Excel to have these continued multi-day outages. Just last month in March, we had a 4-day outage where I live up here on just off of Sugarloaf. And this is not something that is sustainable by any means. I get to see firsthand how this impacts our community, and most people up here do not have access to any cell service or any other means of communication if the power's out and our battery's running dry. And, we did our best to run batteries out to all of our sites as fast as we could, but even still, a lot of our network did ultimately go down. So, and especially in windstorms and major events, having critical communication and knowledge of if there's a fire in the area when there's no cell service is essential. So this is a life and safety risk for our community, and we need investment to happen throughout our entire region. I feel like Excel has failed us not just with this April outage, but for decades. There's been very little investment in our infrastructure, and it shows. And, we typically log upwards of 100 power disruption events a year, and at this point, we need change. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. Mr. Katzenmeier.
Good afternoon. Thank you for taking this all in on this. I'm a business owner, Columbine Barn Restaurant down in Littleton, Colorado, and we suffered loss, and it's better than losing our houses and everything we own, though. My real concern is the communication. The communication was started off to be halfway decent. We got an email notification, we got a phone notification, and then we actually had somebody call in person and tell us that your business will be shut off. Downfall to it was within 3 to 4 hours of actually being shut off. We were shut off at 3:18 on Saturday afternoon. Didn't get power restored until 12 noon on Monday. During the time frame we had there, they gave us update notifications every now and then saying, okay, should be back on by Sunday at noon. Okay, might go into Monday, and then it might go into Tuesday. So the frustrating thing is how to plan for your barn, restaurant, or your business. You're anticipating, especially NCAA championships going on. How do you prepare? How do you do? So you get to prepare, you get a plan, and then all of a sudden it's wiped back out once again. That's the frustration part. The part I don't understand is how they come up with the areas to be taken out. We're on the C470 corridor. Just to the north of us, the neighborhood was in, and there's a 5-acre field there. That's just at Pearson Coal Mine. It's an old coal mine. It's got higher profile power lines there. Why did they choose our side and not their side? I just don't understand the reasoning behind how they pick and choose. The other last thing that I have is there is, I think, lack of planning possibly between Jefferson County, maybe Xcel Energy, the commissions, whoever looks at the planning and zoning. If there's a 50-foot tree within 50 foot of a power line, that just doesn't work. I think there needs to be more engineering involved and more discussion and planning. Of course, hindsight's 2020 right now, but in the future, I think that's an avenue to look at. Thank you for taking my call.
Thank you for sharing, sir, and sorry for the impacts. Mr. Valdez.
Hi, hello. Thank you for having me in this hearing public. I just want to kind of question Xcel Energy on which kind of efforts they have put into the system, particularly for transmission and distribution equipment, considering like this type of planned outages, so like they last for a long period of time. Like in order to minimize that, there are different type of technologies, like in particular, like the Schweitzer relays, like they have kind of came up with good ideas to determine if transmission line or distribution feeder is down or is broken. And I would like to kind of also ask Xcel Energy how they do their risk assessment for this kind of natural event. Like it seems like they did not a really good job to minimize the outage time, downtime, and it could be better job and also kind of giving more like notice time to the people affected with this type of momentary outages that has a huge impact in the economy. And so, and just also basically kind of see if they will have to improve the reliability of the system to avoid these kind of situations. And I would like to kind of see what are the mitigation plans, like typically Xcel takes into consideration for these kind of situations. Considering like these kind of events will gonna happen more often, more frequent, and the system needs to be reliable and self-healing system. And I would like to ask Xcel what they are doing to have that system and improve the system, particularly to transmission and distribution. Thank you for this time.
Thank you, sir. Greatly appreciate it. Mr. Putterman.
Hi, I'm Joshua Putterman. For some reason, my video is not being allowed to be. Oh, okay. Let's try this. All right.
We got it. There you are.
Okay, great. I'm going to follow up on my old friend Niels Tellier's statement with an addendum. Niels was addressing questions on the actual power grid management and the indicators for how to turn off and turn on transmission systems within our grid here locally. I'm a homeowner, taxpayer here in Boulder County, and the CEO of Extreme Event Risk. We're a climate change, extreme weather risk probability modeling group who's also partnered with a utility vegetation risk entity known as Shelterra. My main question for Xcel is, what are the metrics that were determinant on why to shut down or power down our network in comparison to what are extreme wildfires based on electric utility wiring that goes errant due to wind. Let me explain. If we look at the metrics between the Marshall Fire and what happened on the wind over the weekend of the 7th, we did have extreme wind. That's absolutely true. And we did have a higher ambient temperature of over 50. But that's where the comparisons change. What our data shows is there was, in the Marshall Fire, we had almost 200 days of what would be drought conditions, no moisture in 2021 up to the 30th of December. What we had is tremendous moisture. We had huge snowfalls. Our soils, our trees were moist, and we had cool breezes. And so from just a fuel perspective and wildfire, I'm not saying that we could not have had an ignition on in some way, but we had a lot more moisture on the ground. And therefore, what was the reason to shut down our system when the wildfire risk, at least from what we could see, was so much lower? Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Good questions. Mr. Glick.
Thank you. I'm not sure my video is working either. Can you hear? Oh, there it is.
There we go.
My name is Scott Glick. I'm a homeowner in Larimer County by Loveland. I assume that I might be at the end of the grid where it transfers over to REA. I teach construction management at Colorado State University, so I have a different perspective than some of the previous people will have, although I'm speaking for myself. My first concern is I was in Florida for an extended time when I got some notifications I could do nothing about my house. But I was concerned that they said buy a generator and make other arrangements, which violates the IEEE 1547 anti-islanding rules that are out there to protect linemen. And I'm concerned that all those generators that weren't disconnected from the grid might have caused power surges upon re-energizing the system by Xcel. And in my case, it blew out 2 of my appliances and some of my neighbors. And I called the appliance repairs today, and they're like, we can't get to you for weeks because we have the same issues as several people. I don't know how they balance things, but all the new electronics in like microwaves and stove, which is my case. I have a dual oven and only one of the ovens got blown out, which tells me that the line voltage on a 220 weren't balanced when energized, which is a problem. And I'm in the process of pulling out a claim to Xcel, but we don't have an office in Colorado that goes to an out-of-state office. And I don't think that Xcel is going to want to pay for my appliances that were just a year old due to their I'm not going to say incompetencies, but not paying attention to how surge was suppressed when that re-energized happened. I'd also like to comment that I've lived in Colorado since 1950s, and wind wasn't a problem until the last few years, and we're building in areas we shouldn't be building in. But Lee County, Florida, which is Fort Myers area, they have Category 5, and they're looking at Category 6 hurricane impacts. They have concrete reinforced poles, not wood. I would suggest that Xcel look to other parts of the country with more severe wind problems than we have for some of these answers. And I also think that Xcel should have some. All the costs get passed on to us, whether Xcel pays for them or not. I would like to see Xcel and some of the other utilities put in scholarships and some of these other public community support systems and put that money back into the infrastructure that a public utility is supposed to do to provide us, not provide other support for entities as a government, which is not their job. And I would like to thank the chairman and the commission for your time.
Thank you, sir, for sharing your experience and your comments. Greatly appreciated. Thank you. Ms. Siegel, you're up.
Can I see the timer, please? Oh, there it is. Sorry. One word for this, municipalization. The other word is unacceptable. On the 30th of December, everybody knows, it's so obvious. It wasn't dry and the winds were not that high. The Marshall Fire, what happened there? I don't believe anything about Excel. I don't believe a word they say. There was an internal employee from Excel that reported a detached wire on El Dorado on the line right nearby, and that wire was not repaired. It was sometime in the year preceding. I want to know when exactly that wire was reported, and I want to know why it wasn't repaired. And I talked to Michael Dougherty about this because I thought they should have criminal charges. And he said, no, they can't, because 3 days later, it was really cold and they didn't want to freeze the pipes in some of the houses. Well, it's a lot cheaper to freeze the pipes in some of the houses or move people out and get them into hotels and than it is to rebuild entire new houses. The trade-offs were unimaginably bad. When I got home after riding my bike to the dentist that day at 10 o'clock, in the morning, at 5:30, and when it was dark already, after my bike blew over and I had to have the chain put on, when I got home, guess what? There was a tree down, just the same size as a power pole on my line. Excel didn't come for 3 days. Tell me that they need to have a power outage to check for down wires. They didn't come for 3 days. I was terrified that I'd be the cause of the next fire from Marshall. 3 days later, this is January 3rd, when they finally came and tore down the tree around my place. Now, I wasn't directly affected this time, Eric, but I am indirectly affected. When I go to the grocery store, when I go to the restaurant, to all these people, when I depend on healthcare, what all these people have testified exemplary. It's unbelievable. This, better, not bigger. That's what Al Bartlett said. Better, not bigger. We've got to get rid of this big situation and bring it down to size. This is not okay. This is unbelievable, unacceptable. I'm sorry I have to be angry, but I have to be.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Siegel. Appreciate your comments. Mr. Takahashi.
Okay, I'm taking this a different way. It is my understanding that as a regulated monopoly, Excel has agreed to provide its ratepayers safe, reliable, and affordable energy. So let's start with reliable. It seems to me a planned outage is starting to bring the question of reliability into focus. This isn't an unplanned safety shutdown. This is a planned event, which segues into why did we have this planned event? Well, there was danger of wildfire started by energized power lines, which brings into question whether we're safe. So right now we're looking at, well, maybe it's not reliable, maybe it's not safe. And you've heard all of the affordability issues that have been brought up today. Not only that, but for the last year, we have had docket after docket pleading with the commission to stop the rate increase hemorrhaging. So I would like to suggest that Excel not get their guaranteed profit to their shareholders until they hold up their side of the bargain. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Greatly appreciate it. Anonymous, if you could state your name to the extent you're willing, that'd be great. You're up. Mr. Athanasopoulos.
Yes, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity here. I guess my first thought is, I'm not sure that I buy the safety aspect of a proactive shutdown. This seems to me more of a liability play related to Marshall Fire than it is specific to that. I understand, the risks, especially for people in a rural area. But like some others have said, I weigh that against the probability of guaranteed impacts that we're hearing from others, and items that I will actually mention here now. I'll get into some things that might be duplicative to what you've heard, but one aspect that I have not heard that I absolutely want to touch on here is related to the impact on kids, on students. In the throes of this shutdown, right, kids were taking CMAS, the Colorado Measures of Academic Success tests. In order to be successful at those tests, kids need a good night's sleep. They need, good meals, and they need to show up at school with a charged Chromebook in order to begin those exams. They need to be able to take those exams in an environment that is at least comfortable, right? Not walking into a school that got its power back up on a Sunday night, and no time to actually heat the school and are sitting with coats on, shivering, trying to take these exams. These have long-lasting effects for these kids, right? We're talking about determining what reading levels they will be in, determining what math classes they will be in. It's just very impactful. And it's not just CMAS, right? Older kids were also in the throes of studying for SATs, right? Which can impact what college they can actually be accepted into, as well as what scholarships that they will receive. So some pretty big impacts to kids. What I'm looking for really from the PUC and from our legislators is really a prohibition on a proactive shutdown after 30 years in telecommunications. I've never shut a network down waiting for an external effect to impact it, right? You run that network until you can no longer run it. Several businesses in my area were shut down. Local Firestone told me that they had a gentleman's car that was completed and stuck on the lift. They couldn't lower it. So that person now is out of transportation for the day. My area in town is generally pretty dark to begin with. It was really total darkness, lights out, really not a lot of police presence. My neighbor's home was broken into during that time. It's like a looter's paradise. And we had no ability to call 911. I don't have a landline. I have a cell phone, and all the cell towers must have lost battery during this duration of time. And so I had SOS on my phone, no ability to be able to call or receive information from my home. So, I don't know that additional resource or additional time would have helped that situation. So thank you. Appreciate it.
No, appreciate the additional perspective. So thank you, sir. Ms. Dutray.
Hi, I appreciate every single one of the comments that have come through so far. It's been very educational. I am a member of InfraGard and the National Disaster Resiliency Council, and I help plan Black Sky tabletop exercises for the Electrical Infrastructure Security Council. I'm also a member of CISA's Extreme Weather Working Group. I also owned a multi-award-winning food manufacturing company here in Colorado. I live in Arvada, and I didn't lose my power during that time, but I had friends that did, and I understand the impacts of it clearly. However, I also know that NOAA and the National Weather Service and every single news channel gave ample warning to every single person in Colorado about the impending weather. I also know that the Department of Homeland Security and the Department of Emergency Management and FEMA also tried to prepare all people for every type of emergency and disaster that we may face as a nation. Ready.gov and all of their trainings and all of their tools has been active since 2003. And people choose to deny climate change science and all of the effects that can occur in every single region in this country, including Colorado. People do not understand or want to pay more for power lines to be placed underground or pay for new water lines, bridges, dams, or anything else in the infrastructure that needs to be updated. They want to flip a switch and have it all magically appear as they have had for their entire lives. They don't want to provide defensible spaces around their own properties by cutting down trees that potentially could take down their neighbor's house or a power line. They don't want to cut those down. So people choose to be unprepared for this, and this for them is all by their own choice. They don't understand planning, prevention, practicing, mitigation, resiliency, or recovery. And all of the agencies that I listed above and all of the ones that I'm involved with plan for these types of emergencies. Businesses already are required to have contingency plans, and a lot of them don't even know this. As well, is now being suggested to have backup power and supplies for a minimum of 2 weeks. It's no longer 3 days because of all of the effects of climate change. We have cement that's crumbling. We have a lot of things that are going on with our infrastructure. And to note for the business owners out there, because I owned an award-winning manufacturing company, food manufacturing company. There are several USDA agencies that have rapid response grants and loans that are available due to disasters. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Greatly appreciate it. Ms. Zanizer.
Hi, my name is Julie Zanizer, and I am very grateful to you commissioners for taking public comment. I live in South Boulder on the edge of open space where we frequently experience sustained and gusty high winds, not unlike what we experienced with this outage, close to miles of hugely expensive aerial transmission lines that Xcel recently installed. We have been evacuated because of fires, so we appreciate the concept of preemptive electricity shutdown if this is done properly. We live in an all-electric 120-unit townhome community where more than 50% of the homes operate sump pumps 24/7 because of continuous groundwater drainage and basement flooding. Although our electric distribution lines are undergrounded, our power was shut up for almost 3 days. I have a slightly different perspective than some others. I urge you to make this post-outage examination an opportunity to harden our electrical systems with investments in forward-looking distributed technologies instead of only making repairs to the last century transmission and distribution system that Xcel operates. I would like to request strong PUC encouragement, monitoring, and enforcement and Xcel support without obstruction of projects, plans, and policies for modern distributed energy systems to provide improved reliability, sustainability, and resilience. It's well established that one of the best ways to guarantee power reliability is undergrounding. And as you know, communities with franchise agreements such as Boulder are able to apply for undergrounding funds, while communities not in franchise do not have access to these same funds, even though they pay into Xcel's distribution and operation budget at the same rate as those in franchise. All customers should have equal access to these types of funds. Community input into options for using these funds for system hardening is essential. Boulder and other communities may choose to use funds for undergrounding or may opt for investment in increased community solar gardens, residential and commercial rooftop solar and storage, community microgrids, virtual power plants, supercapacitor battery installation, neighborhood energy sharing, or other strategies. So this was a disaster for many people, but it's also an opportunity for us to not just do the same thing over again and not just fix our issue, but look at how we can have a better, more reliable system. And I do appreciate, I really feel that you guys are a terrific commission, and I do appreciate how hard of a look you've been taking at our electric utility this year. Thank you so much. That's all.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for sharing your perspective. Mr. Kostelnik.
Yes, thank you. So I live in Louisville. It was just another half hour of wind, and I would have lost my house. I was lucky enough to be just on the edge of the fire, where the fire line stopped. But with this outage, I actually received notification that I would be out, but I wasn't. But I guess what shocked me most is the amount of time, given 3 hours notice, or maybe 4 hours, three and a half hours, I believe. And I guess what I'd really like to be, what I'd like to have investigated is, when did Xcel decide that this was going to be their operating procedure? And essentially why, since that point in time when this decision was made, weren't they, doing PSAs, sending out notification? It could be, we knew, the news had that there would be high winds probably a week ahead of time, to start to send out notifications of, you may potentially be impacted. You're in an area that might be, to start to warn people. There's probably, I don't know, did they decide it 6 months ago? And so I think it really, to me, the whole only giving 3 hours of notice to essentially a lot of the Marshall Fire, the victims that are suing Xcel, it almost seems like retribution. And I would almost think we'd, borderline criminal investigation to find out, look at internal communications within Xcel to see if that's why they did it the way they did. If there was, say 6 months or whatever, they decide this would be the operating procedure, why did they wait so long? And then the flip side is that if that's, or if they decided a while ago and then just by ineptitude decided 3 hours ahead of time to send out notice, that there's some head should roll within Xcel for that reason also. So that's kind of my 2 cents. What I like to see done is either find out the motivation behind the way they did it. Was it, honestly criminal, or was it just inept? And then the procedure going forward to start to send out notifications with the, again, you potentially may be impacted. So I'm done. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Greatly appreciate it. Mr. Bashir. You're muted, sir, if you can unmute.
All right.
There you go. We can hear you now.
Okay. Sorry. I was going to say, I joined a little late, but I did have some comments. I just think there's no way that Xcel could have provided really enough forewarning to tell everybody they're going to do a shutdown on power. And I have a big issue with the messaging that their spokeswoman had, where she called it, an outage. It's not an outage. Outage is an act of God. Shutdown is a choice by the company. They're admitting essentially and saying right out front that their system is not safe enough to withstand certain weather conditions. And they turned it off. And this is a case for them, which I think is just a straight admission that they're probably guilty for the fire that burned through Louisville. And I hope all the prosecuting attorneys for those folks in those homes are looking at Xcel's actions in this case. They're essentially, I think, admitting fault by saying we're going to have to shut it down anytime there's high wind. They know they can't survive it, and they're not doing anything really to fix it. they are paying their CEO obviously $10 million a year, and perhaps that would go a long way to buying some more employees to do line work, fix trees, like I said, take trees out of lines. But I do feel that since they made a shutdown, a conscious choice to turn off the power, that they should be financially responsible for all those people who lost food. The food bank, I saw a good news picture on them on the news that said they lost, a few thousand pounds, maybe a ton or more, ton and a half of food that were just spoiled. Some places were able to get stuff iced down in a short period of time, other places weren't. Really, I think they've got to understand that there's a financial decision either way. Either they make their system safer, and it's a utility. This is one of these things that's supposed to be on at all times anyway. Then it shouldn't be really for profit. It's supposed to be a service that's provided for the communities. If they make their system safer and be able to leave it on all the time, or if they're going to turn it off, then they're going to have to pay a lot of money to all the people who they damaged. So that's all I have to say. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Mr. Troughton.
Hello, thanks for the opportunity. So I'll apologize in advance. I joined late. So if any of these comments are redundant, you just have to bear with me. I didn't hear your introductory comments. I didn't hear any of the elected official comments, but and I don't really have anything prepared, so it's going to be a little bit rambling. I'll apologize for that in advance as well. I guess I'll start off by saying that this isn't a new problem. It may be new locally, but relatively new locally, but I think it's really probably inexcusable that the utility as well as the PUC hadn't been paying attention to what's been going on in the rest of the country and learning from that prior to kind of what happened over the last week or so ago. And I think it represents, a micro problem within Excel and possibly on the part of the oversight of the commission, as well as a macro problem. And I saw something, I'm not sure if this is accurate, but I saw something that said, part of the lack of communication was the result of, we're in the process of developing a plan. This was, I think, a comment from Excel. We're in the process of developing a plan, but it wasn't kind of fully baked yet. And that's why, things were late, things were not perfectly well structured and organized, but I don't think that's an excuse for the lack of communication. Communication is an easy thing to put in place, even if a strategic plan's not completely finalized. So I think, people were late to the dance here. I think it's important too, to approach this from a systems thinking standpoint. And I know that there was a community wildfire protection plan that's just recently been drafted in Boulder City or Boulder County. And if Excel wasn't an active partner in that, and I attended one of their workshops, if Excel wasn't an active partner and an engaged partner in developing that plan, then kind of shame on them and shame on the people who put the plan together, because these two things go hand in hand, the firefighting, the resilience, and knowing exactly where the lines are and what's going to happen in the event of an outage. That's really people have to be working hand in glove there. And if that didn't happen, then that's a big wasted opportunity. I'm going to touch base briefly on insurance. I think there was a FAIR plan that Judy Mobley worked on at the State House recently. It affords, I think, $750,000 in coverage, but there should be a coverage component of that offered for homeowners that extends to this off-premises power interruption that's not caused by a direct peril. So if that's not part of what Judy has developed in the FAIR plan that's been structured for Colorado, that is something I would encourage you guys to contemplate. That kind of coverage is available in the business and homeowner space, but it needs to be the loss needs to be the result of a covered peril. And I know I'm out of time. I'll just make one last comment about undergrounding. 20 years ago, there was a 50-50 partnership, public-private partnership in Boulder, city of Boulder, between Excel and private homeowners who wanted to underground their power lines. I've been in Boulder for 3 years. We recently undergrounded 400 feet of our power lines in my neighborhood, completely 100% at the expense of the homeowners. I've also had a home hardening survey done by the local fire department, and that was really good. I think that The settlement agreement, there was $30 million that Excel put out in a municipalization settlement agreement, but you can't use any of those funds to underground lines on private property, only public property. You ought to look at this in relationship to the WUI and find out which parts of the city are most at risk and take a strategic view of where you want to underground and where you do not. I guess that's all I have to say since I've already burned my time. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Greatly appreciate it. Van Sanagata.
Here I am. Hi. I want to thank the commissioners for providing this opportunity to give feedback. I am a retired Homeland Security professional from the Department of Homeland Security, CISA, as well as a past emergency manager for Douglas County and with the state of Colorado. So I guess, you know, I also currently in my retirement provide my volunteer efforts with the Douglas County Douglas County Mitigation Committee for wildfire mitigation, as well as my local Roxborough Mitigation Committee. So I'm really involved with efforts to keep our community safe from wildfire. So Excel, you know, I do appreciate that they were trying to be proactive. It really was perplexing to me, particularly from the communication standpoint. Our area here has at least 1 to 2 outages per month since the last year and a half because of construction that's going on. And what I've seen has been great communication. They send you a notification through the app that they provide, and you know when it's happening. You can report those outages very quickly, and you can stay up to date even in between their updated messages by going online and looking at the outage map. And so it's been very good. Now we have this big planned outage, and I was part of the planned outage area, and there was the communication was so poor. I was just flabbergasted. Now, even if you can't specifically send out messages to individual customers, you certainly could have updated your map so that we have some idea of what's going on. My other comments really are with the way they turned the power back on. It seemed to me that it was very arbitrary, that they didn't have a strategic rubric as to how they were going to turn the power back on. And it was very spotty. Listening to the other commenters, I definitely got the sense that it was all over the place. Our community is basically underground. There's one above ground line from the substation to our home, and not to our home, but to the community. And that would have taken very little time to investigate and ensure that it was intact before they turned the power back on. So, I appreciate the opportunity to provide input, and thank you so much for your efforts in trying to figure out what went wrong and try and assist Excel in correcting this for future outages. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Sanagata. Ms. Olivia.
Hello, I work at Boulder Community Health, which is the local trauma hospital on Foothills in Arapahoe. And I just wanted to make a comment and kind of bring some awareness to the fact that the hospital was part of the intentional pre-planned power outage, but we did not receive notice from Excel that the power outage was going to happen until 3 hours before it did happen. The hospital does have generators and operated on generators for over 24 hours. But just given that it was part of the pre-planned, like, de-energizing of power lines rather than a natural occurrence and an accidental power outage, I think that 3 hours of warning was not great on Excel's part, especially because in the coming days after that, the hospital was brought in a lot more patients than usual. A lot having to do with, like people were saying before, about people at home that have power needs for like medical equipment or for oxygen or whatever. People having medical emergencies due to lack of power were coming in, and then also because the street lights were out and a lot of people were not adhering to traffic laws, there was a ton of car accidents. So the hospital was taking on a lot more patients than usual in the emergency department. And yeah, I think that 3 hours notice for something that was planned from the power company was just not great on their part. And so maybe in the future, if the local hospitals are going to be involved in an intentional de-energizing of lines, the hospitals should be notified, as well as like the police department, the jails, the fire department, everyone like that. We're trying to take care of our community, and we really can't do that if we don't know what's going to happen with the community as soon as the power company makes a decision. That's all. Thank you.
Before you drop off, can you state your last name?
I prefer not to. I'm not like a higher up at the hospital. I just work there.
Okay,
So
no
I don't
worries.
really want to like represent the
worries.
hospital. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thanks for that clarification. Greatly appreciated. Is there anyone else who would like to deliver comments? Ms. Lustrom.
Yes, I would.
Just 1 second. Go ahead. There.
Okay, I can't be on the video, it says. You got me shut off there.
Mr. Shock, why don't you wait 1 second? Ms. Glistrom's gonna go, and then we'll go to you. So
Okay.
just give us 1 second. Go
Sure.
ahead. Go ahead, Leslie.
Hi, afternoon, commissioners. My name is Leslie Lustrom, and as you know, I've spent quite a bit of time at the Utilities Commission over the last 20 years. I seem to have blurred myself. I don't mean to do that, but doing too many things this afternoon. So I just want to thank you again. We know your plates were very full before all of this happened, and now all of a sudden you have to sort this out. And I'm afraid that's sort of part of the climate change century, which is you just start compounding the challenges and the disasters. I think you've gotten a lot of great suggestions. You've heard what this was like, absolute chaos. I mean, the folks that were in the traffic accidents are probably not coming here because they are trying to heal. And that's very, very serious. So, you know, when the president of Excel here in Colorado, Robert Kenney, came from PG&E, which did a lot of preemptive power shutoffs, public safety power shutoffs, and then to bungle it so badly with such serious and close to serious conflict. So there's all of that to address, but more importantly, as I look at the planning process that's used in the commission, I don't feel like you and all of the parties are really understanding what this means to live in the century of climate change. You're not really saying if we're going to have these extreme weather events, April, 6th was just the most recent. We've had the flood, we've had the Marshall Fire, that's just in Boulder County, and many smaller challenges. We just plain need to build a different kind of system. We can't just take our old 20th century system, pop out the coal plants and pop in wind and solar. I mean, I'm glad for the decarbonization, but we're not really addressing what's needed to build a 21st century grid. And part of what we're not doing, to the best of my knowledge, and I apologize if my knowledge doesn't include this, we don't do anything to monetize what happens when the power goes out, which it does a lot. this was an extreme event, but I keep track of all the news articles that come up, 30,000 people here, 100,000 people there, 20,000 people there. Because, you know, the windstorms and the blizzards and all on and on and on. And so to me, when we don't monetize what this means, we're going to say, oh, well, it's too expensive to build microgrids. It's too expensive to make sure that we really have backup power, that we can island different sections, that we can really build a 21st century grid. And so we just assume that what happened on April 6th, 7th, and 8th had no costs. That's clearly not the case. And I beg of the commissioners to begin to think about how to incorporate that into the planning. So thank you again for the time.
Thank you, as always, Ms. Lustrom. Greatly appreciated. Mr. Schock, you're up.
Thank you. It still says I don't get to be in video. I wanted to bring up two points, and no, it said you add. There we go.
Oh, there you are.
Whoop. Okay. I wanted to bring up 2 points. Number one, security. Not yet mentioned in the press or social media is the lack of communication between Excel and our serve and protect public servants. I talked to 2 state patrol officers that had just completed a roadside stop at 2 p.m., an hour before the de-energizing was to take place. Neither officer had been informed of the upcoming disruption. That made no sense to me. I did not contact their superiors or the City of Boulder Police or Boulder County Sheriff's Office to see if there had been any communication with Excel. Maybe there was just those 2 officers left out. I don't really know. But it seemed pretty strange that no one knew what was going on, and especially in a high value position as a state patrol officer. If this de-energizing becomes a normal thing with every high wind event, and in Boulder, certain years, in the 90s, we had 4 years, there were 10 or more events of high wind. That's like almost every month this is going to happen. So it won't take long before those with bad intentions will make Boulder an easy target every time the wind blows. Thieves, burglars, peeping toms, stalkers, rapists all operate under cover of darkness. Every time Boulder faces a blackout, will we also face the probability of a crime spike? There was one gentleman that did mention there was a burglary. That's the only one I've ever heard in all of this stuff. We were black. We were all lights out. Yeah, very dangerous situation. Number 2, I think as a regulated monopoly, Excel has a higher social responsibility to those they serve than more common corporations. Excel needs to involve the community in the decision to de-energize the power lines. It appears the April 6th decision was made solely in the boardroom in Minnesota. Local input and a hand in the decision needs to be here, not hundreds of miles away and years of local knowledge away. I want to thank you for hosting this. It's been very enlightening to see lots of different ideas and whatnot. Thank you very much. That's all.
Yes, thank you, sir, and enlightening for us too. Mr. Rowe from Plain.
Yeah, thanks for taking my call. I'm a little bit time bound with boarding here. I have listened to the last few folks speak, and I've been really appreciative of the comments. I again didn't hear the intro, so condolences for if I bring up redundant information here. But I'll speak from my background. I'm a veteran. I was in the submarine force, and I work at Google for data centers or cloud infrastructure. And so I kind of come from that world of critical services. And the thing that I was going to talk about was around the lack of communication that was given in advance of the pre-planned outage. I myself am in Louisville, Boulder County, received zero notification before the pre-planned outage happened, and scant to no information after the outage other than the email that my power was out, which was quite obvious at that time. I think the problem is actually bigger than that, though. Coming from my background as a provider of critical services, I'm seeing things in the Boulder Reporting Lab that, for example, Excel did not consult with the wastewater treatment plant in Boulder, and we ran the near miss of a sewage overflow into Boulder Creek because of this. I'm hearing lots of feedback from my fellow citizens about lack of notification, and some of them, in recent call here on the hospital front. These are critical services, and it begs the question that is the management of Excel seeing themselves as a critical service provider? And my perspective on that is that as a critical service provider, the standard of bar, exactly like my predecessor was mentioning, is a higher standard than any other local business that is providing a goods or services to the community. This is a critical service, and as such, the communication and the integration with other local units and the local government and critical services, they're beholden on Excel. The bar of standard is so much higher, and I'm greatly surprised that the communication with those services was not followed, and it kind of pales in comparison to my petty claims as a local citizen that was not informed here. So I think that's the bigger problem, and I really urge us. I urge the committee here to tackle the culture problem of whether Excel sees themselves as a critical service here, and notifying the local government and the local utilities and services that are dependent upon them, like the wastewater treatment plant, the hospital, et cetera. Multiple examples here. That's all I had to say. Thanks so much.
Thank you for your service, and thank you for your comments. Greatly appreciated, sir. Mr. Coleman.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman Blank and Commissioner Gelman. Good to see you. Thanks for sticking through all this and adding this one more thing to your plate. I live in South Boulder. I've owned a home here for about 9 years. I have solar PV. I have solar thermal, which I also use to heat my house as well as hot water. And I have a battery backup. So I blissfully unaware of what was going on around the city. My house was fine, other than shaking in the wind, of course. But from a power standpoint, I really couldn't tell there was any problem with the grid. I think that's the direction we need to go, is to get more people in either individually house by house or microgrids or community battery backup. We need to push out those services out to where the load is. And one of the reasons I was blissfully unaware that weekend, the 6th and 7th, is because I don't have a landline. I have a cell phone. I didn't get any phone calls or texts for 2 days. And I was, being the nerd I am, I was happy with that. But I can see that was a problem. That was a huge problem. So I don't know. Excel's got a lot of smart people. You guys have been dealing with them, and you know that there are a lot of smart people there. They know their business. They know what they're doing. It's just inconceivable that they could bungle it this bad just by accident. So that's my conspiracy theory. It's just hard to imagine that so many talented, knowledgeable, experienced people could just make such a mess out of this. Thank you for listening. Talk to you later.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Berry, you're up.
I'm a Marshall fire survivor, and I understand having had my house completely burned down, possibly by Excel power lines, why they chose to shut off the power. And I don't necessarily think it's a bad decision to shut off power because we have so many hundreds of power lines through completely unmitigated wild grasslands and forests everywhere. So I understand why they shut off the power. Talking to other fire survivors in California and Oregon, I understand that this is probably just the way that things are going to be. Because power is being shut off preemptively in those other places for wildfire risk and has been going on for several years now. So I understand if perhaps this is the new normal. However, I do think that there needs to be much better notice because I only found out because of neighbors letting me know with about 2 hours notice, which wasn't enough time to prepare. I agree also with the previous commenter that, you know, having solar PV battery backups would probably help everyone be more resilient when the power does go out, especially if this is the new normal. So good luck in figuring out the notice, the management, and the right protocol. And thank you for hosting this meeting.
And sorry for the loss of your home, and appreciate your comments today. And good luck rebuilding. Thank you, ma'am. Anybody else who'd like to comment?
Yeah, I would.
Mr. McLaughlin.
Hi. So I have a retail business in downtown Boulder, and I just simply need to know when 100-mile-an-hour winds come into the forecast, is this going to be what Excel does in the future? The hit to our business was substantial. It probably wouldn't seem like it to most who maybe aren't in business and in a retail business or any commercial setting. But margins are extremely low these days, especially with the rising costs of everything. If this is going to be the mode of operation in an area where 100-mile-an-hour winds are not uncommon and haven't been. In fact, there's a wind record in Boulder dates back to 1971 of 147 miles an hour. I'm a native. My father was the vice president of public service company in the 90s, and they never would have done this. They would have beefed up their emergency crews. They would work on their infrastructure, but they would not simply preemptively shut down. If this is a new MO, then I'm going to have to take my business and leave. So I would like to hear from Excel, just simply in the future, when we get a forecast like this, are they going to do this again? And that's all I have.
Thank you, and sorry for your struggles. Mr. Bowers.
Hi there. Thank you for doing this. I appreciate everyone's comments, and that was a difficult time for us. I have a very sick adult daughter. It was very difficult to keep her warm and to keep her fed. And I think that it feels to me like Excel is not spending the money to maintain their systems up to where they need to be. I'd like to point out that there is a website, psl.noaa.gov/boulder/wind.html that shows quite a few even higher winds and higher gusts from 1966. This goes to 2021. If they are handling their legal liability by just shutting off the power for a few days, we're going to be seeing quite a few of these. If anyone wants to take a look at this, there's, you know, some years where there's like 11 instances of the actual winds, not just the gusts, over 70 miles an hour. So I'd like to say that, you know, something that needs to be done, that we have a system, however we do it, I don't think the solution is everybody buy $20,000 worth of backup equipment. I have backup equipment, but it only lasts for a few hours. I don't think it's acceptable that everybody in Colorado buys, extremely expensive solutions to handle a very aging and a poorly maintained system, as well as a poorly maintained process for dealing with warnings like this and situations like this. We lost a lot of food, we lost a lot of money, a lot of time that I need to, pay attention to my work. And that's all I have to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Bowers. Ms. Polsinelli.
Hi, yeah, I hadn't planned on talking, but I thought I'd just chime in a little bit. We run a business we weren't affected by this, first off, but we do run a business on the western corridor of Colfax. And we genuinely lose our power, I'd say monthly, for hours at a time. So yeah, so this just kind of speaks to, are they doing anything? Are they upgrading this sort of thing? And while this didn't affect us, this, affected us personally hard because, we're trying to run an ice cream business. So if we lose power for 10, 12, 48 hours, we're done. So usually we can withstand the 4 or 5, and that's very, very common. So just 2 cents on that. Thank you.
Thanks. Thanks for sharing. Anyone else who hasn't spoken who would like to? Ms. Deaton.
Hi, I just now logged on, so I'm sorry if this has already been covered. I wondered if we're going to be able to tell which one of us who were without power, if we were shut off on purpose or as a result of a down powered line.
I lost you. I don't know if you had more to say or just the one question.
Oh, that's it. I just, because the reason I'm asking is we had received a notice of service interruption earlier in the week that told us that our service would be out on April 5th from 8:30 a.m. to 3:30 p.m. And it was turned on earlier than the little notice said. I think it was about noon or so, but that was on the 5th. So that was Friday. So everything was fine. We thought, oh, okay. And then of course, Saturday night is when we lost power, and ours didn't go back on until Tuesday afternoon with no other notice, no phone calls, no texts, no emails, or anything from Excel. So, we did what we had to do to try to find out what was going on. And we hadn't heard about the precautions that they were taking because of the wind. So we didn't even know about that until after the fact. But so again, my question was if anybody knows how to find out, or if we will even get to find out if our outage was because of a downed power line, or if it was a planned shut off. And that's it.
Thanks for the question, and more to follow.
It was on purpose.
Okay.
Ms. Weston, did you have, I think you spoke once. Did you have more?
Yes, I had one alibi, because as I was listening, I heard that you guys may give Excel a bump increase in June, but because I know our outage, which still makes no sense to me, goes out, or half the side goes out, but it comes on faster than this side. But I wanted to ask, instead of giving them an increase, is there any way, since about 60% of their board members, because I don't know what their structure is, and I know they're a monopoly, but they always get a bonus every year, and it's upwards over, $18,000. So instead of giving them that bonus, is there any way they can reinvest that money instead of just keep giving them a rate hike? But I know our infrastructure needs a lot of work, but that could be part of the solution, reinvesting instead of paying out that money. So that was just a alibi that I just wanted to put out. Thank you again.
Thank you. Appreciate the comment. Is there anyone else who hasn't spoken who would like to speak? Mr. Kostelnik, but we'll keep the second round brief.
Just very quick, I just checked the mail and Excel was able to send me a letter talking, it's like buying services for protecting the weatherhead and for underground water and all that, but they can't send a notification that they're going to turn the power off. So they can send sales letters to everybody, but they can't send, anything about their plans about cutting power.
Real-time update. Thank you, sir. Raven St. Jean.
I actually just had a question. I heard someone earlier in the meeting said something that they heard that Excel will not be paying for our groceries that we lost. I just wanted to clarify if I heard that correctly, because I've been filling out some paperwork for 4 days, hoping to get my grocery money back, but I guess I'll stop doing that if I'm wasting my time. If anyone knows.
I don't have answers, Director White. I don't have no advice.
But Ms. St. Jean, I think since you registered, you have your email, what we can do is pass that question directly onto the company.
Okay, thank you. I guess I'll just keep filling out the paperwork then. I thought I heard someone at the very beginning say it, and I just wasn't sure if anybody else had heard the same thing or knows where that was heard from.
I believe the reference was to a media story.
Oh, okay.
I don't know more than that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody who hasn't spoken who would like to speak? Mr. Bashir, briefly, please. You're muted.
Oh, sorry, feedback about filling out the forms. Excel did tell me that they would accept all the forms. I think the lady should continue to fill out her form. Whether or not they actually decide to refund the users for their losses is a different issue, but I think it does make them go through the steps of having to verify all the paperwork. Again, something else that they're responsible for, and should probably take financial responsible for. And hopefully you can hold them financially responsible for paying for everyone's lost food items. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. Anyone who hasn't spoken who would like to speak? Ms. Siegel, I think if you could keep it brief, and we may end with you.
Thank you. I just wanted to report also that when they didn't repair that detached wire that an internal employee reported preceding the year of the Marshall Fire, then guess what they did, Eric? They did repair it. They repaired it on January 3rd. That's a little bit late, isn't it? And that destroyed the evidence. That's all I got to say.
Thank you, Ms. Siegel. I guess Council, do we, are we, able to adjourn? Did we notice this till 6 or 7?
It was
Do you know,
noticed,
Director White? Okay,
yeah,
good.
it was noticed till 7. I think we have reached the end of comments though. Anybody listening that still wants to provide comments can do so by providing written comments to the commission. Would just advise that if anybody else decides to come on later when we wrapped up, that they can certainly go to the commission website if they didn't have an opportunity to provide oral comments here, to provide written comments.
Thank you, Mr. Gomez, and maybe we can provide a little note on the screen with something like that. Director White, did you have additional thoughts?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, that's what I was going to recommend. If Casey or Stephanie could put back up the website for written comments. And you can also get to that by just going to the PUC main page at puc.colorado.gov. There's a bright red box right on our front page that will take you to that site. I do see one more hand up.
Yeah, so take down the thing for now. I'll have some final comments. I'll also ask Commissioner Goman for final comments. Ms. Stinnett.
Hi, Michelle Stinnett. I am the Disaster Recovery and Resilience Manager for Boulder County. I am in the car driving and was not actually going to give written or oral comments, but I was wondering, how long is the link to provide written comments open and available? Will it be closed after tonight, or like how long is that going to be left up?
Or it'll be open for weeks, maybe months. I mean, this is I mean, we're moving as quickly as we can, but this is going to play out over time. And whether you file oral or written comments, we'd love to, through our team, better understand your experience and how we can collectively do things better. So welcome any comments as well as an ongoing conversation.
Appreciate it. Thanks so much.
Would anyone else who hasn't spoken like to speak? Well, I just want to thank everybody for participating tonight. Geez, I learned a ton, and you know, the next steps forward to making things better is to understand what happened, and we just can't do that without hearing your experiences and thoughts and how you all went through this. So thank you so much for participating. This is the beginning, not the end. And you know, we just have to, as a community, you know, take the lessons learned and do better. So Commissioner Gilman, any thoughts, comments that you'd like to share?
Yeah, thanks, Chairman. I think people are maybe still joining too. So I suspect if we get more people who want to make comments, we'll continue to stay on. But I just wanted to really thank each of you for the really insightful and well-informed and respectful comments. You know, while certainly these circumstances are not ideal, I've been really heartened tonight by the sincerely constructive and thoughtful comments that we heard, and a lot of concern for our most vulnerable neighbors and community members, and really an ability by all of you to see the real trade-offs we need to think through. And I think what is a real interest in trying to make things better rather than just being negative or criticizing, but a lot of really great ideas and insightful comments that were really helpful to me. And while I think it's clear there were some real difficult repercussions of that weekend and a prolonged outage, I think it's also clear we had some really potentially catastrophic near misses. First of all, on the infrastructure side, with some actual and real damage to utility infrastructure, which clearly could have led to a fire or worse in different circumstances. But also, I think some near misses that I understand much better tonight on the potentially devastating circumstances related to the prolonged outage, with the failure of other utilities and communications, and the potential for those circumstances to be worse in another potential scenario. So I see a real interest and need in some good coordination amongst our critical infrastructure and critical service providers. And so I think, I heard some really great comments that provide me with certainly some very low-hanging fruit on ways to ensure that we could avoid the most catastrophic of circumstances. As we move forward into, as many of you questioned today, understanding what this looks like in the future, what the decision-making will look like, and how that criteria will be understood. So just really wanted to thank you all. This was incredibly helpful for me in understanding the issues.
Director White, would you like to make any final comments?
Thanks, Chair. It's hard to top what you both said, and I couldn't agree more. I really appreciate the engagement and time tonight and people taking time out of their lives to spend these few hours with us and give us your input. It's nothing more valuable than that. I just really appreciate it.
And let's compile all the issues and all the questions and report out and make sure where we need to, we're asking the company questions and we're following up as best we can. All right. With that, we're adjourned. And again, thanks to all.
Eric, could I have an
greatly,
email to send my questions to?
Sure. Director White, is there an email address we can provide, or is there a form on the website?
Ms. Siegel, if the form on the website works for you, that would certainly be easiest. It will go directly into our system.
Okay, do I just go to PUC?
PUC.
That'll do it.
Colorado.gov.
Okay, yeah, I want some
And if
specific
you
questions answered, and I don't want to talk to Excel.
Okay.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
And if you can see the website now, there's and if you can see the screen now, there's another website you can just copy and put that into your browser, and that'll get it directly. But also our main website can do it too.
Yeah, I'll do that because this is too long for me to write down. And I'm late to Environmental Advisory Board, but it was worth it testifying here. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. With that, thanks to all. Appreciate again all your participation, sharing your thoughts, your experiences, and back with more. Thanks, and hope everybody has a good night.
Thank you. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Good night.